go ahead and start with day one, Bobby, if we can. Where were you born and raised?
Day one, born in Orange, New Jersey, to two very poor Italian-American and Polish, Italian-American and Polish-Italian-American parents. My dad was half Italian, half Polish. My mom was 100% Italian, which makes me three-quarters Italian, a quarter Polish, but the last name, obviously, a leftover thing from my Polish heritage and my grandparents on my father's side. We lived in Orange, New Jersey when I was born. That's where I was born. And I was born to two poor parents, two people struggling. They were teenagers. I was born 5 days before my father was 18, 4 months before my mother was 18. And my dad eventually went back and got his GED. My mom did not, but it was hard because he's now in the world as a grown-up raising a family, and the education was limited, and he was not prepared. Unfortunately, his dad died when he was 2 years old, and he was never really given the guidance that he had given me and my brothers to make the grades in school and prepare, always having a backup plan. And as time would go by, we moved from Orange. We got into East Orange, which was a slight step up. And then eventually we had to leave East Orange and get to a better place for a better school system. And I wound up in Wanacue, New Jersey, out in the suburbs, which is where I eventually went on to turn pro, and I hailed from, and most of my career was credited to the kid from Wanacue.
Where your parents they had you when they were very young. Do you know anything about their backgrounds, how maybe their parents were with them, or were they come from good parenting, or your grandparents?
Well, my grandfather, he was a great guy. He had 9 kids. My mother was the 8th of 9, and so he raised and took care of 9 children. Some of them didn't actually make it back in the day. Technology wasn't as advanced, so some of their lives weren't saved when they were young, had illnesses, but 6 of them made it to adulthood. I come from a very, very large family on my mom's side. If you're Italian and you live in New Jersey, you're probably related to me somehow. It's one of those things. We have a family picnic every year. We've had it for 48 years. I'm 49 years old, so when I was 1 year old, I attended the first family picnic. Obviously, I didn't remember it, but I've been to almost everyone since. And my dad, very small family. His dad came over here after World War II, Polish, met my grandmother was Italian. They fell in love and got married, but her family disowned her because of marrying a Polak outside their own. Back in the day, people married their own kind, so to speak. Italian to Italian, Jewish to Jewish, Polish to Polish, etc., and so forth. And he was very, very competent. He was a jeweler and made good money and was fine and took care of his family. But unfortunately, he was a heavy drinker, and the doctor told him if he keeps drinking a fifth of gin a day, he's going to die. He said, okay. So he stopped and drank a fifth of vodka a day. And he sure, in fact, did die. And he was only 36. And my father was, I believe, 2. My Uncle Tom, his big brother, was 7. So now our family had disowned her and told her that's what you get for marrying outside your own, and we're not going to help you. So it caused a great deal of stress when my dad was growing up, a lot of resentment and a lot of crazy things. And my father, eventually, because of the horrific nature of Newark, East Orange, and Bloomfield back in the day, he grew up less than peacefully. That's the nicest way I could put that. The obsession that my father developed from that was his mom and his dad had not prepared him to grow up. And he eventually realized that you spend your first 18 years or first 17 years as a child, and then next 70 or 80 years, if you're lucky, as an adult, responsible for everything that you do. And if you haven't prepared for adulthood in those first 17 years, you can truly screw it up very badly.
Yeah, there's that.
So he was hell-bent on me going to school, getting A's, getting straight A's, and in any athletic endeavor I was in, I was going to give it my all, or I wasn't going to be allowed to participate. So that was the case. And then when I turned 10, he decided I was going to fight. I had no decision. Me and my brothers, Vince and Tony, had no choice. It was his private dream to be a professional fighter one time, and he now wanted to see if one of his children could carry on that dream. And being Robert Edward Ches Jr., that's my real name, Bobby Ches just rang better than Bob or Robert Ches. I was named after my dad, and I wound up in some sort of, I guess it was apropos or poetic justice, wound up living his dream.
So as a kid growing up and young, Did living in Orange, did that affect you in any way growing up? I know there was a lot of racial tension back then between different races, and even to now, I guess, you being Polish and also Italian. Did all that affect you, or were you the minority or the majority in that part of town?
When I was in Orange and East Orange, between the ages of 4 and 10, I was the vast minority. I went to school in fourth grade. When I was in fourth grade, 10 years old, there were 32 kids, 4 white boys, one of which I was, obviously, and no white girls. Everybody else was black or Hispanic, and there were a couple of Asians mixed in. At the age of 8, I was a mascot to a black gang. It was kind of funny. When my parents told me we were moving to Wanacue in the white suburbs, I flipped out. I cried. I said, I don't want to leave my friends. I like it here. I like these kids are my people. As I became 10 years old and moved to Wanacue and turned into a suburb person, if you will, turned a new life. I wound up going to the gym in Patterson, which was predominantly black and Hispanic. So I was right at home. And I wound up getting the nickname or moniker, the white boy with soul, because I didn't fight or act like a white boy, and I had rhythm. And
right, you fought a lot like a Hispanic fighter or a Mexican fighter.
Yeah, well, it's kind of difficult to be shorter than most of the people your weight and not go forward.
Exactly.
I mean, not press the issue, because if you don't, you're never going to win the fight. So you have to do some things, and some of them are very subtle. Just stay at arm's way, cut through the punches, cut through the reach and the distance, be effective without getting traumatized on the way and beat up and come out on top. So there was a lot of little subtleties that were difficult for the average fan to notice. And, again, when I first turned pro, joke was he's white, bright, and polite, but can he really fight? And 18 years later, 6 weight divisions and 3 world titles, people had eventually give me my due and say, no, he's not just a pretty face. If you think my face is pretty to start with. But I could fight, and, there's nobody that ever fought me that didn't find that out. And even if I lost, I could fight.
When you were growing up and you weren't in the gym, you weren't in school, you weren't with your friends, and you were at your house, what was home life like?
Home life, I'm not sure that I can describe it to you accurately without some profanity. And by that, I don't just mean cursing, but I mean my household, the viciousness and the vicious nature of my household was not just rated R, but maybe just a little past that. The beatings that I received as a child, I've seen knock out grown men, and I would be expected to stand there and take it and not cry or not move. And my brother's pretty much subjected to the same thing. As we were smaller, I got less beatings. As we got older, I got more. I guess because my father was, in fact, trying to beat me into being the man he wanted me to be. He likened young boys to steel that had to be hammered into sharp blades of a sword. So it had to be beaten to sharpness and beat to be constructed properly and perfected, yeah.
In his mind, that was his way of making you guys men early, is to do that?
That's exactly correct. That is exactly correct.
Did you have any sisters?
I have a baby sister, but she's 16 years my junior. I was 16 years born, so when my dad died, and I was 21, she was only 5. So she had not really come under that kind of fire yet, and she started to mellow him a little bit. But he wasn't really interested in having daughters. He was interested in having sons. He was interested in raising his own little army of men.
So while this was going on, and while you or your brothers were getting beatings from your father there, where was your mom during that time? Would she be like somewhere crying, or would she be trying to separate him from you guys?
Both, and one led to another, and by that I mean this. Sometimes she would be off crying, but that usually means she was off after she tried to stop him, and she got part of the beating herself. He broke her nose, he broke her jaw, he dislocated her jaw, he shut her eyes, a whole host of silly things. I could tell you things that some people say, always exaggerating, he's full of it, and listen, it's actually worse than it was. I don't bother having to defend it, or I try not to remember it. It's my past. I'm technically happy for it because I've learned from my past what not to do in my future. And here's the really funny thing. And recently, there's been a lot of talk about having my life story made into a major motion picture. The Garden State Film Festival just did a movie short about my life story. And people say, Jesus, I watched the movie short and say, how hard was it to live up there? I said, almost impossible. But I see so many statistics of kids who are beaten, abused, and tortured physically and emotionally and mentally by their parents that grow up to be serial killers, murderers, rapists, and bad people. And I think, from my perspective, I would think Jesus, that's the last thing. If that's all you ever got, why would you grow up to do that? But the problem is that the brain somehow gets conditioned to that and accepts that as behavioral reaction. And I like to think that I'm smart enough to never do that. I never laid a hand on my wife, never hurt my daughter, never, ever was I anywhere or any. The only time I was like my dad is when I was in the ring. If I was in the ring and I knew the next punch I was going to hit you was going to kill you dead, or I lose a decision, you were going to die. Simple as that. No excuses for it. It's just the way I was taught and the way I was brought up.
So your dad had all this violent streak in him. How about your mother? How was she? Was she a strong person? Was she kind of a weak person? Was she a nice person? What was she like?
She was quietly strong, and by that I mean this. My father he would have made Hitler look like Mother Teresa. My mother made Mother Teresa look like Hitler. My mom was the extreme of nice and gentle and kindness. My father was the extreme of viciousness, brutality, and craziness. And I have both of those extremes in me and all these little plateaus all the way to the middle.
Do you think that mixture of him being like that, your mom being like she was, made you half that? You could be violent, but then the other half be like such a nice guy.
And you know what's funny? My father taught me this a long time ago, and he used to teach me this in a number of different ways. I won't go through all of them, but your brain sets the tone for everything your body does. When your stomach's hungry and you get that hunger signal, that pain, it isn't your stomach, it's your brain sending a signal to your stomach to release that pain because it's hungry. When you feel that heartache because you miss someone or you're in love with someone, it's your brain sending the signal. It's in control of everything, and when you can control it, you can shut off emotion, you can shut off your heart, and you can endure pain and things that you might find otherwise absolutely intolerable. And he used to show me some exercises and different things he did. And he one time, I shouldn't say just one time, but he used to hold his hand out, an open hand. And he would say, come here, son. And he would say, bite into the palm of my hand. Bite as hard as you can. Bite through. So I'll give you $100 if you bite through and bite a piece of my cheek, bite a piece of my chunk of my skin off. And I used to think he was crazy. But I understood the exercise. When I bit, the harder I bit, the more he laughed. And I bit so hard, he bled many times. No big deal. He didn't care. It didn't matter because he turned the pain off.
Would he beat you for doing that, or would he...
No. Quite the opposite. He would say, good job, son. Because I listened. As long as I listened, I was fine. If he told me to do something, even if it was wrong, and I didn't do it, if I didn't do it, if I didn't listen, that was the thing he didn't want to do. And as he took this to me and he took this into the ring, there are so many individual stories I could tell you that I understood him, made the difference. There was a time when me and my brothers came, we were grown at this time. I was married, my daughter, we were having dinner at Christmas, and he looked at me and my brother looked at me, and both of them said to me, he said, we're not normal. I said, I know. He said, we're just not normal, Bobby. I said, I know, bro. Don't worry about it. I said, let me ask you a question. Would you rather trade the horror we went through and be prepared now for our adulthood, or would you rather go back and have a perfect life and not for a damn thing?
When you were, let's say, in the ring, when you first started and got in the ring, did you take out any of that anger that you had inside, or what ran through your mind when you got in the ring, when you put a pair of gloves on? Did any of the family home life take part of that?
Prior to setting foot in the ring, my decision once I set foot in the ring was to destroy my opponent at all costs, and none of my family life had anything to do with it. This was a job, and I was prepared because I trained hard, and I literally busted my chops and broke my ass to get the job done, and I had talent. And were there times when flashbacks from my life, from my home life, happened and came right to the front of my mind? Absolutely. But you can't, this is a great analogy. If you're working your job on the radio, you have a really bad day at the office, and you go out home, you take it out on your kids, that's wrong. But now imagine I have to go to my job in the ring. I have a really bad day at home. I can't let that affect my ring. Can't let that affect my ring work. Just separate them, I just do.
How were you as a student during that time? I mean, obviously you were busting your butt in the ring, having
pretty much a straight A student my entire life. I did the work, otherwise I would have got beaten, and I didn't want that. And I knew that if I didn't do the work, I'd get the beating, and I knew if I didn't do the work, I wouldn't get the grades, and I didn't want the grades, and I didn't want the option of being able to do whatever I wanted when I graduated school. And as it turns out, I had 6 partial pre-med scholarships and a senatorial appointment to West Point, but I chose to fight for a living, so I did what I could in school, but I put all the rest of that to work in a career.
So your dad made you become a boxer, but he also made you be a good student. I mean, which one did he want you to do better, or?
Well, he beat me to both, and I quite honestly tell you, if I go back in my mind today, I couldn't tell you which one he wanted more. He used to say, "I don't want you to turn pro," but I always knew he wanted. That's what he wanted. He wanted his son to be a world champion, something he always wanted to be. And it was only apropos that me being his namesake, I went on to win that title. So
would it be fair that he was trying to make you a champion so he could kind of live his dream through you?
Exactly. He was living his dream through me all the time. It was so strange that there were times when I acted differently than he would have at my age at 15 or 17 that he beat me for doing it. It was an insane life to live.
And how were you in the ring when you first got in there? Did it come natural to you, or did you have to kind of work into it to become good?
It came very natural to me. Matter of fact, I first set foot in the gym September of 72. I was 10. I trained September, October, November, December, January, February the 9th. The day before my 11th birthday to spar for the first time. The first kid I sparred with was 2 years older than me, but about 25 pounds heavier, which was a big deal when you weigh like 70 pounds or 80 pounds. And they destroyed him. And the trainer said out, and I started to say, "No, you." He took the other kid out, and he put in this kid named Jimmy Rogers, who at the time was the most accomplished junior Olympic boxer in the gym, who was 2 years older than me, and only about 20 pounds, only about 5 or 6 pounds heavier. And I was scared to death. I looked at my father, and he looked at me and he scared the hell out of me. He looked at me and he gritted his teeth. He said, "You can do this, son. This is what we came here for. Not I. This is what we came here for."
Did you for the first time there feel a connection to him, or felt like you actually made him proud?
Oh, I know I made him proud because after the next 3 minutes, which was a lot of a blur, I did a lot, and I did it real well against a kid that I should have no right being in the ring with. And the entire gym stopped training, stopped working out, and the onlookers and people in the gym, the trainers, fighters alike, all gave me a standing ovation for like 3 minutes. My father was the proudest kind of face here for that day. But that day, I knew I was special. That day, I knew I had a future in this business. And I was 10 years old, the day before my 11th birthday, and I made a commitment that day that I will give myself the next 14 years, so I'm 24, to win my first world title. And in September of 1986, at the age 24, I won my first title. It's been an interesting ride.
How far did you get, amateur-wise? How far did you get?
I never really boxed Golden Gloves or anything like that. I just didn't get there. I had a couple of injuries, broken nose, broken ankle, a couple different things. I won the Junior Olympics 3 years in a row. Fought on some international teams, USA versus Poland, USA versus Canada. I won both of those fights. One of them I knocked out, the other one I just beat. A very, very limited amount of amateur experience, but did well. 24-2. Not a lot of fights, but I did well.
And I heard about that plane crash, the Poland, what was it, the LOT Poland. What happened there?
December 27th, 2 days after Christmas, 1979, at the age of 17, I fell asleep at the wheel and drove off the road and hit a tree, broke my nose, and smashed up my face pretty badly. Early that March, the 13th or 14th, a plane with U.S. boxing team, which I was part of at this time, had a flight to Poland, to Warsaw, Poland, which is where my roots are. And my nose had a set for 8 weeks, all of January and February. I couldn't train and run. I couldn't do all the things I needed to get in top shape, so I didn't want to, disrespect myself or the team. So I withdrew from the trip. Plane crashed, everybody died. Talk about history being strange.
Leaving the amateurs, what was it like becoming a pro boxer?
Oh, it was a dream. It was I was walking, onto the big stage. I was walking into the arena where legends are made, and dreams are fulfilled or they're trashed. I mean, it was. I think about it, boxing's all or nothing. Second place is last place, and if you win 3 out of every 4 games in the NBA or NFL or hockey, it's a damn good season. You win 3 out of every 4 fights, you'll never make a living. That's it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. And
do you remember your first fight, or what do you remember? Were you nervous?
Yeah, the actual nervous anxiety, just the normal hype, and you're all pumped up, your adrenaline's flowing. It's not that big a deal. There's a certain amount of nervousness. You want to look perfect. And I knocked it out in a minute and a half, and the crowd erupted and went crazy because a lot of people were from the local area. I was a local kid in my high school, and it was a very good debut, and it set the tone for the rest of my career.
And what was your dad there? Was he a part of it?
Oh, yes. My dad was at every single fight that I ever had till the day he died.
Was he a very proud person when he came out with your hands up, or did he kind of keep that in?
No, he was proud. He wasn't blatantly ecstatic, but you could tell he was proud, and his chest was standing out. My father just was he was all business. There was not really a lot of fun or joking or pleasure about it. He was all business.
What was his proudest moment of you? Do you remember him at a point where you could say, wow, I think if I had to choose one time or one fight that he was the most proud of me, what fight would that be?
You know what? I've never given that a serious thought because he never lived to see me win my first world title. So I'm not sure that I may be beating Marvin Hagler's half-brother Robbie Sims in my first 10-round main event on NBC. It had the highest Nielsen ratings in the history of the show up until that time. Might have been his proudest moment, but I've never given that serious thought.
How would a white fighter be seen in those days or in your area where you were fighting?
You know, it's kind of funny. I used to joke because it was reverse discrimination. And I was guilty of it myself. People said, oh, you're this great white. I go, you can't fight. What do you mean? You're white. I said, I'm not really white. I learned in the streets of Orange, East Orange, Newark, and Bloomfield, where everybody was black and Hispanic. There were not a lot of white people in the street. And most of them got run over and destroyed.
But the ones that there were, they had a big following, kind of like Jerry Cooney did. What was it, like in '82 or '83 when he fought?
Sure, they created. If you think back in time, the suppressed minority, the suppressed minority of each era, when the Jews came over, the Italians came over, the Irish came over, the Germans came over. Those were the people, the fighters that rose to the greatest in boxing, and then eventually the Hispanics and blacks were the majority, and have since maintained some of that, and they have risen to the heights of boxing. Couple that with the fact that black and Hispanic fighters, and I say black and Hispanic people in general, have a different rhythm. It's kind of like Larry Bird was a white basketball player, excellent, Hall of Famer 10,000 times over. Perfect, technically perfect in every way. But Michael Jordan floated through the air. That was soul. That's what black and Hispanic fighters bring to the rhythm. To bring to the ring, that rhythm. It's what we call the Americanization of boxing. And the European fighters, until they learn how to deal with that, they all get their ass beat.
What was the last fight you had your dad in corner, or the last fight that he saw you?
Well, the last fight where he was alive, he saw me lose to him, show, which sort of upset me because I came back so strongly and did so many things. A lot of people wrote me off and said I was just a white kid, I'll never amount to anything. And I had my hand broken. I rebuilt my hand with bone from my hip, major surgery. They didn't know if my hand was ever going to work again, enough to not, fold under the pressure and power of my punches. And so he never stepped the last thing he saw, which upsets me. He never got to see me have my hands and his name raised as world champion.
And was he supportive of your loss?
After the last fight, he had no problem. He realized things were what they were. I was a little sick at the time, and I struggled for the weight. And he said, look, you're a little young, you need a little more experience. He said, don't worry, you'll be better than ever. And I knew that, and so did he, and I did.
I read your website about you guys' last fight, with each other. Is it hard to think about every time you think about all that? Or have you?
Well, let me tell you how exactly hard it is to think about it. From that day, 1983, fast forward 17 years to 2000, multiple times a week I would have nightmares about that day. Finally, I tried something in the year 2000. It took me about 4 months to do, working on this every day. Undertaking my father's premise and theory that my mind can control everything. I'd had such horrific nightmares that I woke up with my heart racing, sweating, and really thinking I was going to have a stroke any second and going to die because of the nightmare that had ensued. In 2000, I hypnotized myself to recognize, while I'm unconscious, recognize that my subconscious should bring my father into a dream, be it a good, bad, or indifferent dream, if he is dead. So ever since January of 2000, as soon as my father shows up in a dream, I say to myself in the dream, Bobby, he's dead, just open your eyes, walk away. I open my eyes, and the dream's over. I usually go to the bathroom, I wash off my face with some cold water, and just sort of shake my head like, oh, I didn't destroy me, and I won't let it destroy me. And now it's been probably at least 6 years since I've ever even had him pop up in a dream, 6 or 7 years. I've actually shut him out with my own mind by subconsciously recognizing that he does not exist and cannot torture me. So because he doesn't.
When he did show up in your dream, how was he?
It started out normal, and then it turned into what I call a session, where he's torturing my mother, beating her, throwing stuff at her, smashing the food, flipping over the table, or beating us. And in my dream, I wind up screaming, "I wish you were dead. I liked you better when you were dead." But I wake up and my heart's racing, like my chest feels like it's going to explode. My blood pressure is going through the roof, and I'm literally on the borderline of having a heart attack. But it's that traumatic, and I just can't live like that, and I won't. And I've stopped it. It's not been back since 2000. I have had a couple of instances where he was in my dreams from 2000 to now, maybe a grand total, maybe 5 times, and immediately my mind recognized him and said, I even call myself or call myself something stupid. I said, "Wake up, you stupid idiot. He's dead. Wake up now." And I just opened my eyes, and he's gone. Nothing.
And how you yell at him in your dreams and you think like that of your father, is that how, did you have those exact feelings when you did see him like that or find him in his condition? Is that the last feeling that you had for him before you found out he passed?
Me and my brother found him sitting in his chair with his brains blown out all over the wall. It was not a pretty sight. It's not something anyone should see, especially the son or daughter of any parent or family member of any beloved one. It's just not the thing you're ever supposed to say.
No.
Can't help it, though. My life is what it is, and it's what we insisted of. So that's the last thing I saw. And the last thing I said to him before I went to sleep was, "I hate you. To me, you're dead. Tomorrow I have 2 brothers, a sister, my mother. You're dead to me." I went outside to walk the dog, and I came back and he wouldn't talk to me. He ignored me for 20 minutes, didn't even blink, stared straight ahead, wouldn't listen to one word I had to say. I went to bed, I woke up, he was dead. So obviously I felt like an ass. I did not feel well. As I said, there are some stronger words I just can't say them on the air.
So as you move up in ranks, you get back in the ring, move up in the ranks, fight some real good fighters, Prince Charles Williams and guys like that, Virgil Hill, Grant and Maynard and all them. You get to Robert Daniels, and it's for the world title. What goes through your mind when you're walking to the ring, and what's
I'm going to tell you a funny story. I'm going to tell you a funny story about that fight. Robert Daniels was a 4.5-1 favorite. I have a friend of mine that bet on the fight. He made more money than I made fighting the fight, and I made 6 figures. And everybody said I couldn't beat Daniels. He was 4.5-1 favorite. He beat Dwight Mamaqua when he said you can't beat him. He's too young. You're past your prime. You're moving up into a weight you're not comfortable. He said you can't beat him. And I had a plan to beat him. And when I went out there after in the middle of the first round, the very first minute, I knew my plan wasn't going to work. So I knew I was in trouble. So I had to make an adjustment. What is the adjustment? Well, the adjustment was I had to move a lot more than I wanted to. But people didn't think I could box from the outside because everybody had forward bigger than me. Well, he was shorter than me. So I had to box. I had to move from the outside. I had to step around him and move. Problem was, constantly moving, step around, moving. After the 9th round, my feet were bleeding pretty badly. It turns out that the balls of my feet had worn all the way off. The skin came off. It was just pure blood. I mean, every time I walked, it hurt as much as I could imagine. And I went back to my corner after the 9th round, and I was engaged to Ross, who wound up becoming my wife the following, later that year. And I went back to the corner. Tommy looked at my feet. He said, "What the hell's going on here?" I said, "I don't know. I had to move. Tommy's too strong." I said, "My feet are bleeding. They're killing me." He said, "You want me to stop the fight?" And I said, "No." I said, "I promised Kim she was marrying the champ. And I know she's marrying that son of a bitch." Excuse my language. I said, "She's not marrying him." Yeah. And I thought about it, and I kid you not when I say to you that I don't know. Kind of like when I was a kid, I was afraid of my father. So the fear of my father forced me to do some unthinkable things and go above and beyond. Well, the fear of not giving Kimberly that promise and showing her that championship belt as we got married. The next round I went out there was my best round of the night. And I was bleeding all over the place. And it didn't matter. I just went on and won the fight.
And was there any doubt in your mind at the decision? Was there people saying, "Oh no"?
Well, it was a split decision. But I won the fight. I mean, the fact it was a split decision is part of the drama and the corruption in some of the boxing institutions. Let's face it. You've seen fights where all 3 referees, A, B, and C, are watching fighter 1 and 2. Number 2 is killing him, and number 1 gets a decision. Because the 3 referees were all told which way to lean. It just happens all the time. I don't even want to get into the amount of corruption that's in the game. It's beyond the normal person's comprehension because of the way it's structured.
So once you had your title, what was your goal then? Was it to keep it for a certain amount of defenses?
My goal was to just defend it as honorably as I could, make as much money as I could so that I could take care of my family and my loved ones, and enjoy history because I've been in the history books 3 times. Light heavyweight title, cruiserweight title, super cruiserweight title. Those are my 3 gods, okay? I'm immortal. 3 times in the history books. Forever forward for tens of thousands of years. If you want to know who had that world title at that year, my answer will always pop up because I'm part of history. That's my version of immortality.
While you were boxing, you got into commentating for Showtime. How did that job come about, or how did they approach you to do something like that?
I was approached one day by David Dinkins Jr., former mayor of New York Sun, who was involved with Showtime. Thought I was very articulate and very intelligent, thought I could bring something to the table, and I auditioned, got the job, and then for 10 years I did it until we parted ways. And it was one of the greatest jobs I've ever had in my life because I get to tell the people what they're seeing and why they're seeing it, some of the things that may be going on inside the fighters' minds and bodies so that they understand it better, and it's not just a street fight that they don't understand. It was really a great job.
When I first heard you commentate, I remember thinking, this guy can't be a boxer. I mean, there's no way he could be a boxer. He sounds more professional or more, you sound like a professor in there, and there was no way you could box. You didn't look like a boxer to me. You talked better than probably Steve Albert or Freddie. I would have never thought you were a boxer. I just wouldn't.
Well, it was funny. When I first turned pro, and after my pro debut, they said, Bobby, how would you describe yourself? I said, to be quite honest with you, I think I'm an antithesis of the stereotypical fighter. He said, what did you just say? But, no one speaks in those terms in the fighting because, understand, some fighters aren't dumb. They're just notoriously undereducated. They're the suppressed minority of each era. People that don't finish grammar schools, high schools, never go to college. I got straight A's all the way through high school, and I'm still very articulate, very well read. I also am a member of Men's Have a Genius IQ, and I've kept that through the years. We're in numbing commodities, and on the precipice of greatness. I got some terrific things moving. I put in a few years' worth of time to learn the business and make my, shall we say, connections and take myself in, and now I'm about to make more money in 1 year than I made my entire 18 years fighting. So I'm very happy, very satisfied. And once again, you put your brain to work and you're willing to do the work, you commit yourself to something, positive things happen when those elements are all put together. Just a principle, note, this is a commodity, so I sell high-end things like jet fuel, diesel, Chem DO4, bunker fuel, sugar, cement, iron ore, things that are sold by the tens of millions of dollars a day throughout the world. Just something else that I learned on the internet by reading and asking around.
Thank you for your time, and I appreciate you coming on.
And if you need me again in the future, you know how to find me, sir.
All right. Thank you very much, Bobby. I appreciate it, senor. And would you mind if I go ahead and put your link for your website on I have a bulletin there where I can post links. Is that okay if I do that with yours?
Not a problem. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Thank you, Bobby.